They conquered the world, not with armies, but with bonds. Think of the British Empire. What comes to mind? Redcoats marching, ships ruling the waves, tea and conquest. All true. But the real engine of the empire, the secret weapon that fueled its expansion for centuries, wasn't a cannon or a rifle. It was something much quieter, something you could hold in your hand, a piece of paper, a government bond. This is the hidden story of how Britain financed the largest empire in history. It's a tale of financial genius, national debt, and the surprising power of simply owing money. Let's rewind to the late 17th century. Britain is an ambitious island nation, but it's constantly scrapping with its much bigger, richer rival. France. War is expensive, incredibly expensive. Every time a war broke out, the king had to go, cap in hand, begging for money from wealthy merchants. But this was unreliable. A king might lose a war, die, or simply decide not to pay you back. Lending to the crown was a massive gamble. Then came the Glorious Revolution of 1688. This wasn't just about changing kings, it was about changing the entire system. Parliament gained more power, and with it came a revolutionary idea. What if it wasn't the asterisk king asterisk borrowing money, but the asterisk state asterisk itself? What if the government, backed by the full faith and credit of Parliament and its ability to tax the people, took on the debt? This led to the creation of the Bank of England in 1694. It was essentially a giant loan to the government. Investors put in money, and in return, they received interest payments. Suddenly, lending to the state wasn't a risky bet on one person. It was a secure investment in the nation's future. You weren't just a lender. You were a shareholder in Great Britain Inc. This changed everything. While France was still struggling with a chaotic and untrustworthy financial system, Britain had created a machine for turning private wealth into public power. They called this the national debt. Now, we usually think of debt as a bad thing, a burden. But for the British Empire, it was a superpower. Here's how it worked. The government needed to build more ships for the Royal Navy, so it issued bonds. Thousands of ordinary people, from wealthy merchants to middle-class shopkeepers, bought these bonds. Why? Because they paid a reliable, steady interest. It was the safest investment around. With this massive influx of cash, the government could build the most powerful navy the world had ever seen. This navy protected Britain's trade routes. Protected trade meant more profits for British merchants. More profits meant more people had money too. You guessed it, buy more government bonds. It was a perfect feedback loop. Debt funded the navy. The navy protected trade. Trade generated wealth. And wealth funded more debt. Every pound a citizen invested in a government bond was a pound invested in the empire's military and commercial dominance. The people were literally bankrolling their own global expansion. This system gave Britain a staggering advantage during the Napoleonic Wars. For example, Britain was able to outspend Napoleon consistently, while Napoleon had to plunder conquered lands to pay his armies. Britain could just issue more bonds. It could sustain long, grueling wars that would have bankrupted other nations, all thanks to its sophisticated financial system and the trust of its investors. The national debt wasn't just for funding wars either. It financed the infrastructure of empire. Canals, railways, ports all across the globe, British capital, raised through this system, laid the groundwork for extracting resources and controlling territory. When a colony needed a railway to transport goods to the coast, British investors seeking a good return would fund it. The colony would then owe money back to Britain, locking it into a cycle of economic dependence. Think about it. The conquest wasn't always about planting a flag. Sometimes it was about floating a loan. By financing another country's infrastructure, Britain could influence its politics, control its trade, and ensure its resources flowed back to the empire. It was a quieter, cleaner form of control, but often just as effective as a military occupation. Even after the redcoats went home and the flags came down, this financial infrastructure remained. Many newly independent nations were already deeply indebted to British banks and investors. The political empire may have been shrinking, but the financial empire was robust. The flow of wealth through interest payments and dividends continued. So when we look back at the rise and fall of the British Empire, we see the soldiers and the ships, we see the maps with a quarter of the world painted red. But beneath it all was this relentless, invisible engine, a system built on trust, credit, and the revolutionary idea of a national debt. It allowed a small island nation to mobilize its entire population, wealth, and project power across the globe. They didn't just conquer territories, they capitalized them. They didn't just rule people, they held their debt. The true foundation of the British Empire wasn't built on stone, but on paper. It's a powerful lesson in how finance can shape history, proving that the penor, in this case, the bond certificate, can indeed be mightier than the sword. The empire never ended, it just started collecting interest. Thanks for watching. If you found this dive into financial history interesting, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about the hidden forces that shape our world. See you next time.